Welcome everyone, Tactical H here. Today we have a replay sent in by Coops playing as the Lizardmen against High Elves played by Lenorm. Now, today Coops is bringing a rather interesting army pick with Tenhenhuan leading the army. He is a rather niche Lizardman lord, usually you see Slan or Krogar, but over here, Tenhenhuan actually has an interesting synergy with the Quad of Huoto, who has this dazed effect after the update from Chaos Dwarfs. With the minus 10 melee defense stacked up with the Curse of Onrai Air with the Lore of Beast spell, this is actually a minus 34 melee defense on enemy units and can boost up the lizard's damage by quite a bit. For the rest of the army, we have a whole bunch of skink cohorts lined up with some of the missile troop skink javelins. 3 of them in fact, and then another unit of Quad of Sotak backing the skink front line. On the flanks, the Lizardmen concentrated their mobility, 2 furrowed cold ones. A single horned one, same goes for the other flank. Now for the opposite side, the High Elves, a whole front line of staunch line of spears, regular spears mixed in with Sylvan Guards. At the back, a lot of skirmishing forces, 3 Illyrian Reaver Archers in fact, and then 2 more Dragon Princes for a more powerful cavalry corps. As for the single entities here, Alario the Radiant providing a ton of healing, as well as a single Tempest in case there's any Lizardmen flying goon squad, and then also a couple nobles. And that's it for the army builds. Now let's get the battle started. With the wide formation of the Lizardmen, they have enough mobility to wrap around the terrain and strike the rather weak right flank of the High Elves because they concentrated all their mobility onto the left flank here. Both Dragon Princes, both Nobles, and all the Illyrian Reaver Archers trying to overload the Lizardmen's right flank. However, there are indeed some heavily armored mobility here, 2 very cheap feral colt ones supported by a single horned ones. Their armor and the higher melee stats of the horned ones might be a challenge for the High Elf to break through. While on the right flank of the High Elves, they do not have anything to counter the charge of the Horned Ones, especially when debuffed by a bit of poison and the Curse of Onrai Air, lowering the melee stats of these spearmen to a puny 0 attack and 26 melee defense. They will be quickly shut down by all these Horned Ones and Feral Cold Ones rear charging. While on the left flank here, the High Elves are not having the greatest time pushing through the Feral Cold Ones because their heavy armor and the lack of armor piercing on the High Elf side. Even with the double noble supporting, they are struggling to cut through all these elite horned ones and the cheap Feral Cold ones, especially when Quad of Sotak popping up refuse to die to tank those shower of arrow from the Illyrian Reaver Archers. Now the Dragon Princes are bogged down in melee combat, dragged down by all these poison attacks of the cohort of Sotak. On the other side, the cohort of Huoto is pummeling unit after unit of High Elf spears, their dazed effect lowering enemy defenses by 10. Only 44 melee defense, that is not enough to tank out all the damage from the abundance, mobility, and armor piercing of the Lizardmen forces here, and they will continue to roll over to the next unit of spears. Now their leadership is lowering and soon will be routed as well. However, there's still a lot of elite High Elf fighting right now, especially with the healing available to the Dragon Princes. Yes, they're taking a lot of armor piercing damage from the Horned Ones, but they themselves are just tanking it with the Star of Avalon and the constant Earthblood heals. Plus, the Horned Ones are now being steadily worked down by the double armor piercing anti-large nobles. The thing is that Quad of Sotak are trading very cost efficiently here with their armor piercing attacks and poison debuff. The Dragon Prince's damage output is lowered while they themselves are taking quite a bit of damage in return. The Horned Ones with their armor piercing and pretty decent melee stats are also getting quite a bit of value in this straight up melee trade. 1,400 gold worth of damage value, pretty much earned back their own cost. Now over here, another Curse of Onrai Air, doubled down with the dazed effect. The Sylvan Guards melee stats got nuked to oblivion. Even with martial prowess active, they still only have 20 melee defense. Perhaps the Sylvan Guards still have their armor, but that is not enough when there is a giant power fist punching them in the face. Being supported by skinks, the Boxigor truck will run over yet another unit of spears. Now, Illyrian Reaver Archers with the support of some Sylvan Guard are able to break off some of the skink cohorts, but the thing is that the Dragon Princes are now approaching their heal cap. Both of them have received an abundant amount of healing as they have taken a lot of damage in the straight up trade against Horned One and Cold Ones. The Quad of Sotak might have taken substantial damage in the fight, but they are unbreakable and are still doing damage, dragging down whatever High Elf units they can get their hands on. At the same time, the lizardmen are chasing down the high elf routed spears, trying to run down as many Asur as possible. And the Boxigor truck is still going. It got no brakes, it won't stop, it doesn't stop. Surging forth with a horde of skink and Tanhuan supporting himself, they've got their eyes locked on the next spear unit. At this point, the High Elves have finally worked through the Lizardman's right flank and will be moving their attention towards the center. While there are still some spears to delay the advance of Lizardman, it buys time for the rest of the High Elf mobility to dish out some damage. Dragon Princes, who just got out of a melee grind, decided to take a break and will be chasing down some routed skink cohorts. While the Illyrian Reavers are shooting into this blob of Lizardman troops, trying to dish out as much damage as possible with their missiles, but unfortunately they do not have the most armor piercing, and with the cohort of Horto having 100 armor plus some additional missile resistance due to their scaly skin, they are not taking that much damage from the Illyrian Reaver archers. The nobles are their best bet to deal with the Boxigors, while the Reavers can deal with the skinks. Anyways, we'll be doing a bit of fast forward as the Lizardmen are taking their time with the High Elves. They're stuck on the spears and they're just trying to grind them down, while at the back here, a little bit of a flock of doom bypassing all that physical resistance and armor on the Dragon Princes, draining away their health while the Horned Ones tries to intercept them. They are trying to extract themselves from combat, but not exactly the greatest extraction angle, as they need to pass through a lot of these Horned Ones and the skink cohorts, taking a lot of damage in the process, especially when slowed down by poison and by Curse of the Onright Air. A total of minus 40% speed, now down to 47 speed. A faster infantry can actually catch up with them. As a result, these elite High Elf cavalry are suffering massive casualties, and considering how little healing is left for them, this is rather problematic. At the same time, the Reavers are backing up. They do not want to engage in melee at all, since there is not a single favorable fight for them, while the nobles trying their best to extract themselves from melee combat here, which is not that hard since there's only skinks to intercept them. However, there are indeed some cohort of Horto, but instead of fighting the noble, they decided, you know what, we'll beat down the puny elfin infantry first. And that is exactly what they're doing here, debuffing the stats of the Silverin Guard now down to 32, since they no longer have the martial prowess active, giving the lizards an easier time to beat them up, and now the Boxigor truck is ready to move on. On the far side, Horned Ones are pursuing the High Elf mobility, unfortunately being overwhelmed by Dragon Princes and the Illyrian Reavers and the fear from Ilario the Radiant herself. The clever girls are not coming back, while the skinks will be pushing forward, trying to absorb as much ammo from the Illyrian Reaver archers as possible, so that the monsters and the cavalry will not be taking as much damage. Some regrouped Silverin Guards and regular spears tries to come back to the fight, but as they are isolated from the mobility core of the High Elf army, being surrounded by skinks, there is no saving for them from being punched to death by the Lizardmen power fists. The Horned Ones are pulling back, trying to avoid the skirmish fire from the Reavers, while Alaro the Radiant is circling around in disguise, since she can't really find a place to land. As the Illyrian Reaver archers and the Dragon Princes are trying to avoid combat, but the Feral Cold Ones are not giving up the chase just yet, trying to catch up as many elves as possible and drag them down in melee combat. Another heal goes down onto the Illyrian Reaver archers, keeping their health nicely topped up, while the Lizardmen, due to their lack of mobility, are trying desperately to play catch up. As for the balance of power, it is in slightly the favor of the High Elves, since they do have a very healthy single entity core here. Both the nobles and Alario the Radiant took almost no damage at all, but the problem is that the High Elves are running out of supporting units. The Dragon Princes are at the heal cap, even the Star of Avalon won't be able to save them. The Illyrian Reaver archers are healing, but the other Dragon Princes have just reached their heal cap as well. So all that's left to carry the game is really just Alario the Radiant and the double nobles. The Reaver archers are still shooting, but as I said before, they lack the armor piercing, so even if they can shoot down the skinks, they can't really deal with the armored and missile resistant Croxigors. Though the nobles with their great melee stats, armor piercing, and anti-large is still a major problem for the Croxigors to deal with. Still, the Boxigor's dazed contact effect is very useful in working down their melee stats, giving the lizard units a slightly better hit chance on the elven heroes. Anyways, we'll go back into fast forward here, as we are indeed in a bit of a melee grind here. Illyrian Reaver archers sitting back trying to shoot down as many foes as possible. A little bit of a slip of micro here, allowing the skink cohorts to catch them in melee combat, dragging them down. Ilario dropping in another heal trying to keep her elven units in the fight, as Tanhuan and his bodyguard Boxigors are not exactly struggling in this fight. Some Dragon Princes regrouped, slamming straight into the blob trying to do some rear charge damage. But the thing is, the Court of Huotou are a regiment of renown indeed, and their leadership are rather hard to break, especially supported by Tanhuan with his leadership aura. On the far side, there are more and more skinks coming back as they were originally routed a bit, while the last few Court of Sotak, 14 models left, but they are still fighting here. Now, Tanhuan is not providing any poison buffs with the Blade of the Serpent's Tongue, since it is indeed a bugged item, and actually this is the replay where I discovered this item is bugged. However, the Court of Sotak does have poison, and that's all they need to keep all these nobles and whatever high elf supporting units nearby debuffed by poison. And as a result, the nobles are not dishing out as much damage, and when they're hit by the contact effect plus possible Curse of Unright coming in, these nobles are just not holding up in melee combat right now. Tanhuan especially buffed up by Stand Your Ground alongside some supporting units on his side. They are actually beating back the High Elves rather handily. One of the nobles are almost done for. Ilario is also running low in health. The other healthy noble here still standing and fighting, but the balance of power is slowly edging in the favor of the Lizardmen, finally clawing back the first time in terms of balance of power. These Ilarian Reaver archers will not be able to support this fight, being pinned down and screened away by the Skink cohort. The first noble buckled, followed by Ilario the Radiant, leaving only a single noble being dazed by the Boxigors right now. Tanhuan is a pretty decent combat lord, so if he can do some cycle charging, he can dish out some pretty nice damage to the noble as well. We'll be doing a bit of fast forward here as the single soul noble is surrounded and grind down. Eventually, his leadership will also give out. There are still some regrouped Reavers, but they can't really do much at this point. With only Ilario and the noble remaining, the High Elves can't really do much to turn the tables. GG to both Koops and Lenorm. A very good game from both players, but I do think that Koops have a major advantage with his build, with a whole bunch of armored, mobility and monsters plus their armor piercing, overcoming the heavy armored defenses of the Silvern Guard and the Dragon Prince, especially with the magic damage from the Court of Huotou, beating down the physical resistance of the Dragon Princes, and even the Horned Ones, who normally doesn't do that great. When sitting in a melee grind against the Dragon Princes, got a lot of value, pretty much earning back their own cost. The other one not so much. However, the main spotlight of this game is really Cohort of Huotou, getting over 4,000 gold worth of damage value. Most of that damage is actually dealt to the Ilario, the Radiant, and the two nobles here. Really just working down the very expensive single entity core of the High Elves, while the Dragon Princes also not enjoying the fight against the Court of Huotou, with their armor, physical resistance, and their melee defenses all countered by the Regiment of Renowned Boxigor, with the dazed effect debuffing their melee stats, the magic damage ignoring their physical resistance, and armor piercing punching through their armor. As for the rest of the units here, Tanhuan did very solid in this battle here with his armor piercing and pretty decent melee stats as well, providing a bit of poison attacks, and also whenever he casts spells he gets a bit of damage resistance due to his item. The rest of the army, Court of Sotak, 1,600 gold worth of damage value. As always, a very solid unit, actually survived till the end game here, all thanks to their unbreakable trait, dragging down High Elves left, right and center. The rest of the Lizardman units, the Skink cohorts with their javelins, did some pretty decent damage, while the rest of the Skinks as well somehow got a lot of damage value through melee fight, possibly because of the melee debuffs from the Curse of Unright, equalizing the fight between them and the High Elf spears, plus chasing down routed units here and there. For the rest of the mobility, their feral cold ones not doing a lot of damage, mostly just absorbing the damage for the horned ones, especially at the beginning of battle, tanking the hits from the Dragon Princes and allowing the horned ones to fight a little longer and dishing out the damage. For the High Elf army here, Dragon Princes did okay, not too amazing here since they did reach their heal cap, and yet they only barely earned back their cost. The rest of the High Elf army nobles did okay. Silvern Guard got pummeled by the melee defense debuffs from both Tanhuan and the Cohort of Huotou. Illyrian Reaver archers definitely not doing much damage here due to their lack of armor piercing. Perhaps a better combination would be these guys plus a metal mage somewhere on the hero squad. The spears did meh, unfortunately here, as they do not really have a great fight against skinks and the court of Hortal. Ilario the Radiant, definitely not a melee fighter, especially when there's nothing good for her to fight over here, so not a lot of damage value on her either, mostly doing healing for the high elves. That's it for today's battle. I hope you all enjoyed this replay, and if you want to see more, be sure to subscribe to my channel. If you want to showcase your own replay, feel free to drop by my Discord or send me an email with the replay file attached. I'll be sure to check them out. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Tactical Lich, signing out.